Hello and welcome to a lesson on how do we round and solve math equations. We've recently focused our attention on just rounding, using the steps to round equations so you know how you can round numbers up or down to quickly estimate answers. Well, now we're moving into actual equations where we will have answers, and you'll be happy to know the steps are exactly the same, except for step 5. Step 5 is when you actually solve the answer. Let's just review the rules real quick. Mr. Panza's rounding rules say, Rule 1, underline the number in the place value you wish to round. When you're solving an equation, you have to match up the two numbers and see which highest place value the two numbers share, and that's the one you underline to round either up or stay the same. Step 2, you circle both numbers to the right of the underlined number. Step 3, sing the chant. And step 4, anything you highlight or to the right of either number becomes a 0 and you're all right. Finally, when you have your two numbers rounded and estimated, you solve the math equation. You answer the addition, multiplication, subtraction, or division problem. The best way to actually teach this is to show you a lesson. Let's move on to some examples. For example, if I'm given the opportunity to round and estimate and then solve an equation like 78 times 31, what I would typically do in this equation is take what I already know and make sure that I round it first. So I need to take 78 and I'm going to round it to something totally different. And I'm going to take 31 and I'm going to round that to something totally different. Whatever I round to, I'm eventually going to multiply. In this case, I don't have to multiply. I just have to see which of these four choices matches what would be the rounding rules. In this case, both 78 and 31 are numbers that go into the tens place value. So I underline the highest place value that they share, which is the tens. Step 2 tells me circle the number on the right of both numbers. Then I also highlight. Now, I follow step 3. Sing the chant. This is a 5 or above, which tells the 7 to get a shove up to 8. And step 4 tells me that anything circled or highlighted to the right becomes a 0 and I'm all right. I do the same exact thing for 31. 4 below, I let this 3 go. And then anything in the circle or highlight becomes a 0 and you're all right. So in this case, I don't have to actually multiply. I already know that my answer is C. When I'm estimating 78 times 31, I get 80 times 30. Next example, 589 times 5. Well, in this case, you do not want to round to the ones. That's not going to be high enough. You're not actually going to have an opportunity to round because there is no decimal. So instead, I just focus on the number with multiple digits. In this case, it's 589. I'm going to round that number, and eventually I will multiply it by 5. In this case, I'm going to round to the highest place value, which is the hundreds. I underline that digit, circle the digit to the right following steps 1 and 2. I also highlight, which again is in step 2. Then I sing the chant. This 8 is a 5 or above, so I give this 5, the one that I underlined in the hundreds place value, a shove to a 6. And then step 4 tells me that anything circled or in the highlight becomes a 0, and you're all right. Now I'm ready to multiply. A quick trick to multiply a number with zeros. Take the zeros right out of the question, place them into your answer, and now you have a single digit times a single digit multiplication question. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. That's my answer, 3,000. So when I estimate, 589 gets rounded to 600, and then solve, multiply by 5, gets me the answer of C, 3,000. Another example. In this case, I take 55, and I again am never going to round it to the ones place unless I have a decimal, which in this case I do not. So I have to focus my attention on 55, underline the highest place value, circle the digit to the right, as well as highlight, and then sing the chant. This is a 5 or above, which tells this number in the tens, the one I underlined, to get a shove to 6. And then step 4 says anything circled or highlighted or to the right becomes a 0, and you're all right. Quick trick, take the 0, put put it into my answer, and now I have a single digit times a single digit multiplication question. 2 6s walked into the desert, and they became thirsty 6s. Or 360 as my total answer. Now you may be wondering, what happens if they don't share a place value like the problems we have seen? For example, if you have a question like 23,382, and I'm trying to subtract 8,802, you need to make sure that you are looking at the highest shared place value, which in this case is the thousands, because this 3 is in the thousands, and the highest shared place value it has is with this 8 in the thousands, 8,802. And I need to round first. So I follow step 1 and 2. I underline the digits I'm going to round, circle the digit to the right, as well as highlight, and then I sing the chant. The first one, 23,382. This 3 is a 4 below, so I leave this 3 go. And then step 4 says anything I circle or highlight and to the right becomes a 0, and I'm all right. This one, however, is a 5 above, so I give this 8 a shove to the 9, and then everything I circle or highlight becomes a 0, and I'm all right. Now I'm set to subtract. All of the zeros just subtract down to zeros. I can't subtract 3 from 9, so I borrow from my 10,000s place value, which makes this a 13, and I'm ready. This gives me 4, and I drop down my 1 for my answer of 14,000, or choice B. So make sure you're following all of the rounding rules, which is what we had originally addressed, how do we round, to address this question, how do we round, and solve. Hope these steps helped you along your way to rounding problems in your head and mentally, as well as on paper and pencil, and solving equations.